All right, we started this course with a question. Why can't I just do it? And now you know. It's not discipline, it's not motivation, it's not a better app or a tighter morning routine, or if you're like me, it's not that you're a loser. It's that you've been pushing the wrong part of the chain. Tear model. Thoughts create energy and emotions. And that energy can either lead to action or create resistance. Now, if the energy drives action, those actions then create your results. You can't force the A and expect the R to change permanently. You can't manage the E and expect it to stay managed. The leverage point is T. It always has been. And that's the model. But models are just ideas until you see them work. So I want to show you what it actually looks like when thinking shifts and what happens to everything when it does. Someone I worked with couldn't have a conversation with her partner for months. Not because she didn't know what to say. She'd rehearsed it 100 times. She knew exactly what the problem was and what needed to change. But every time she got close to saying it, something stopped her. The thinking pattern running underneath was, if I'm honest, they'll leave. And that thought, it created fear. That fear created avoidance. Avoidance created distance. And distance was creating exactly the thing she was afraid of. The relationship was dying because she wouldn't say the thing she needed to say to save it. When we mapped that pattern, she saw it. The thought wasn't protecting the relationship, it was actually slowly ending it. So we tested a shift. What if honesty is how you protect this relationship, not how you risk it? It was a different thought, created a different emotion and energy, and also a different action. She had the conversation within a week. Not because she'd suddenly become brave, but because the thinking shifted and then the emotional energy moved from resistance to alignment. Another person stuck in a job he hated for 3 years. He had a family, young kids at home. He told himself and everyone around him who'd listen that that's why he couldn't leave. I have a mortgage. I have kids. I can't just walk away from a stable paycheck. That's irresponsible. It does sound responsible, right? But here's what actually happened. He'd come home exhausted, not just tired, depleted, miserable. And the kids he was supposedly staying in that job for, he didn't want to be around them. He'd walk in the door and have nothing left. Short-tempered, checked out, counting the minutes until bedtime. Not theirs, his. The thing he said was keeping him there. I'm doing this for my family. Was the thing taking him away from his family. And his thinking pattern. A good father provides stability. Leaving means I'm failing. Leaving the job, the kids. That thought created guilt every time he imagined leaving. Guilt kept him frozen, and staying kept him exhausted. And then the exhaustion kept him absent. 3 years coming home to people he loved with nothing left to give them. When the thinking shifted, staying in something that drains me isn't providing for my family, it's robbing them of me. He gave notice within weeks, not because of willpower, but because he finally saw that the thought, I'm doing this for them, was the exact thing costing them the version of him that he wanted to give. Neither of these people became different people. They thought differently about one thing. They shifted their perspectives, and that one shift changed the whole chain. The private VQMe call does exactly this. We take one pattern from your report, walk through it, and something real, not theory. Your actual stuck point. 15 to 20 minutes. That's all it takes. Once you see the power in the tool, you'll understand the power that's within you. I want to tell you one more story, and this one's mine. Last lesson, I told you about the pattern I lived with for years, choosing arenas where failure had a built-in excuse. So convenient, Basketball when you're 5'3", male-dominated fields, sabotaging public speaking because you don't think you're good enough, but you don't want to admit that. My brain had a built-in system to protect me from ever being in a position where the only explanation for failure was me. That was the pattern. But I didn't tell you what shifted it. I cried a lot growing up, out in public, embarrassing. Sports, school, work. Yes, in front of the CFO when I reported to him. Every missed shot, every strikeout, every piece of criticism, tears. And for a long time, I thought the problem was the crying, but it wasn't. The problem was what failure meant to me. The thinking pattern running underneath everything was failure means I'm not good enough. Not crying is a weakness. It was much deeper than that. Failure, any mistake, any tiny stumble meant something was fundamentally wrong with me. That's what my brain told me. And that made me angry. Not at the situation, but at myself. I didn't like who I was when I failed. And that self-directed anger drove everything. See, the thought, failure means I'm not good enough. The emotion, anger at myself, self-dislike. Not sadness, but sometimes just fury at my own imperfection. So the action? Well, cry and then hide. Make excuses. Choose arenas where failure could be explained by something other than me. Protect myself from ever having to sit alone with, I failed. And there's no other reason. The result? A life built on protection instead of authenticity. Successful on paper, exhausted and unfulfilled underneath. That pattern ran for decades, from Little League to the boardroom. Same thought, same anger, same hiding, different stage. And then I learned about this science called axiology, the science of how we assign value, how we think, how value actually works mathematically. And something popped open. I learned, which I always knew in my heart, that I am intrinsically valuable. And so unique, priceless, and irreplaceable. Not because of what I achieve, not because of what I produce, but because that's what a human soul is. And nothing I do or fail to do can take that away from me. That's not a motivational poster. That's a measurement. That's what science actually shows. I can show you the math. And when that thought landed, really landed, moved from my head down to my heart, not as an idea, but as something I understood to be true, the whole pyramid shifted. The emotion changed. Oh, failure still stings, but mistakes do matter. But they don't mean what they used to mean. They're just information. Failure's feedback. They're learning. Everything happens for me, not to me, even those missteps. And the action changed. I stopped needing the built-in excuses. I stopped hiding. I stopped choosing arenas where I could explain away failure. And I started showing up as the actual version of me, not the protected one. The result? I built a life and a business grounded in what I actually value instead of what I was afraid people would see or not see. The same girl who cried at strikeouts grew up to umpire in the Little League World Series. Same tears, different understanding of what they meant. The tears were never the problem. They were the signals. That's what emotion is, signals that something mattered to me. The problem was the thought underneath, that failing is something that meant I wasn't enough. When that thought shifted, everything else shifted. Now, that thought might not work for you. Your brain is wired differently. And that's what we measure with VQMe. And those shifts don't happen because of willpower. They don't happen through understanding. And they don't even happen through understanding how value works. It's the TEAR model, not as a model, but as real life. Your version of this is in your VQMe report. The thinking pattern that's running underneath whatever you've been forcing, avoiding, cycling on, spinning, whatever it happens to be. The call is where we find it and work with it. Again, the link's below. You already know what your version of this is. You felt it in the whole course. The thing you've been forcing, the conversation you've been avoiding, the decision you keep churning on. Maybe it's the thought that says, I should be further along by now. Maybe it's, if they really knew me, they wouldn't stay. Maybe it's just, oh, I'm going to mess this thing up too. Whatever it is, it's not a character flaw. It's a thinking pattern. And now you know that. It's not a willpower problem. It's a T problem. And the good news about the T problem is that the T can shift, not through force, through seeing it clearly enough to choose a different thought. So let me put this whole course together. Lesson 1 was willpower doesn't work because it tries to force the action without changing the T, the thought. You've been pushing on the wrong layer of the pyramid. Lesson 2 was the tools you've been using, personality tests and other type of measurements, measure the action level, the effect. They describe what you do, but can't reach why you do it. And they create the illusion that you know. Put you in a nice little bucket to tell you where you are. And then lesson 3, what they measure versus what matters. Your perception of your behavior isn't the same thing as your thinking pattern. And the thinking pattern is where the leverage lives. Then in this lesson, when thinking shifts, everything downstream shifts with it. Not through willpower, but through alignment. That's the model. Now you've seen it at work. In Sarah's decision paralysis, in Gabe's relationship with his boss, in a conversation that was avoided for months, in a job that felt like a trap for 3 years, and in the pattern I lived for decades before I saw it. What's the one thinking pattern you recognized in yourself during this course? Not the action you want to change. That's part of it. But what's the thought underneath it? Share it in the comments if you're willing. You might be surprised how many other people have the same program running in their head. So you just learned the TEAR model, the engine underneath everything. Course 4 takes this and makes it personal. We're going to look at how your specific cognitive patterns, the ones your VQMe report already mapped, show up in your decisions. Not the TEAR model in general, but your TEAR chain and the specific thinking pattern creating your specific emotional responses and your specific stuck points. But before you go there, if you're willing, and if you're feeling the recognition right now, if this course described your internal experience in a way that personality tests never quite reached, book the call. That's where we make it real. Not theory, not another model to file away, applied thinking on your actual situation. And again, the link's right below. And if you've had the call, be sure to encourage others to jump online and to jump on the call in the comments as well. See, my friends, you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not a failure. You're thinking in patterns that don't serve you anymore. And now you can see them. That's where everything changes. Look forward to seeing you in course 4.